My name is Alyssa with Every Stride Counts. I'm a certified equine bodyworker, and I would like you to meet my own horse, Lakota. Lakota has been 9 years old for about 6 years now, because once you go double digits, you just can't go back. He's an American paint cross, though what he's crossed with is a bit of a mystery. I frequently do short, light bodywork sessions on Lakota before his workouts, but he's due for a full session today. Lakota is my partner for various disciplines, including upper-level Baroque dressage. But most of what I do with him lately is dressage in hand, meaning high-level training performed while I'm on the ground instead of on his back. However, as you'll see throughout this video, just because a horse isn't ridden much doesn't mean they don't carry a lot of tension. After a quick groom with his buddy Finn, I do a baseline movement test to get an idea for how he's feeling before we start. I notice he's a bit guarded on his right hind. And because horses' bodies work in diagonals, and the trot is a gait where diagonal pairs of legs work together, I make sure to watch his left front carefully too. Sure enough, he tends to land a little heavily on his left front. Additionally, he carries some tension on the left side of his neck and rib cage compared to his right. Once the movement test is finished, I do a muscle palpation test, which involves testing the response of large muscle groups to see if they're sensitive to touch. Not surprisingly, due to his upper-level job, Lakota has several areas that are tense, but I want to focus my attention on the right pectorals, the lower neck and scapula of the left side, and the right hindquarter and lumbar region. The final baseline test I like to do involves taking measurements of various landmarks on his body for symmetry. I place all 4 feet square. Well, that was easy. It's really nice when they know the cue word square. Now I measure the symmetry of his chest by using landmarks on the points of his shoulders. Here we can see that his left shoulder is higher than the right. It's really hard to see in the picture, but his left shoulder is also exo-rotated, or turned away from the midline. I also look at his sternum, which is tilted slightly to his right. That's not surprising, considering the pectoral muscles on that side are so tight they're probably pulling the sternum that direction. After his chest, I measure his face. I measure his face. After some ear scratches that are absolutely necessary to the success of this session, I'm finally able to measure his face. I take a look at his TMJ, or temporomandibular joint, to see what level of asymmetry we're starting with there. I can see that his left TMJ is higher than the right side. I then measure how his nostrils align with one another. Something interesting about this case is that not only are his nostrils misaligned on the horizontal axis, but the vertical axis is actually, well, not very vertical. At this point, on the bridge of his nose and lips tilt off to his right side, and his left nostril is more flared than the right. Then I take a look at his hind end. I measure the widest points of the pelvis, which are called the tuber cocci. And I can see that the left side is slightly higher than the right. When I take a step back, I can also see that his tail is falling a little bit left of center. This tells me we have some pretty serious tension on the left hindquarter that's pulling the fascia of his tail. While I've been taking these measurements, I've also been taking diligent notes if one side or the other is rotated forward or backward. But this is really hard to tell on camera unless we look at him from above. As we can see, Lakota's favorite posture today is to have his left side angled forward in comparison to his right, which he shows us in his head, shoulders, and pelvis. Okay, so he's a bit of a hot mess right now. These asymmetrical landmarks throughout his body can result in tension and discomfort, which can prevent him from feeling and moving his best. This is where the bodywork comes in, so I'm going to see if I can help him. Get started on his right side. I often start by working on the rib cage, and specifically, I'm targeting the cutaneous trunci and the intercostals. The former is a superficial or surface muscle that twitches to get flies off, and the latter sits a little bit deeper and is responsible for expanding the ribs with each breath. Needless to say, both work constantly, which is why they end up being a little tight. That's starting to feel better already, so I switched to a fascial stretch of his right hind leg, which targets the whole area I was just working on. He gives me a lick and chew, which means he's mentally processing how this movement is making him feel. Once this area releases, I move on to the other side and do the same thing. I expected him to be more tense on his left side, but he actually seemed a little bit more comfortable there, possibly because it was able to relax a little by working the opposite side first. Once both sides of his ribcage are in better shape, I move over to his front end. He gave a very strong response when I palpated his pectorals on his right side, so I go ahead and see if we can address anything there. I start off with some fascial stretching of his right front leg, moving slow not to upset those sore muscles. The shoulder and chest actually free up pretty quickly, which tells me they probably relaxed a bit already with the work I already did on his fly shaker and intercostals. I double check by palpating that problem area again, and he reacts like a whole different horse. I'm happy with that, so I move on to his neck. Lakota is a naturally high-headed horse, so he tends to develop some tension in his lower neck. I work primarily on the brachiocephalic, which is so huge in this well-muscled horse that I can't even wrap my hand around the whole thing at its widest part. I ask him to lower his head to make the process easier on both of us. He makes some less than happy faces at me, but that changes to a relaxed, content expression the more I work at it. He responds with a lick and chew, which is a sign that it was a good change for him and he's mentally processing how it made him feel. Once this side is feeling better, I do the whole process over again on his other side. Then, with his neck feeling better, I think it's a good time to work a little on his face. I do a little bit of work on the temporal and interscutularis muscles, which don't seem to be quite as itchy this time around. Then I massage the masseter, which is the largest muscle of the lower jaw, and is actually the strongest pound for pound in the entire body. Next, I measure the hyoid apparatus to see if it's leaning one way or another. Sure enough, it's tilted slightly to the left. I help Lakota relax and realign his hyoid. He makes a funny gaping face, but quickly accepts the realignment after that. That means I can move on to his lower back and hindquarters. I start with a simple softening technique on the lower edge of his gluteus medius muscle, and then I use my step stool to get a better angle on the gluteal and thoracolumbar fascia. These huge sheets of fascia are some of the thickest in the horse's body, so ensuring that tissue can move easily and provide stability to the lumbar spine is incredibly important. After warming up the area a bit with direct contact, I switch to manipulating his hind leg. I did a little bit of this earlier, but now I'm going to turn up the intensity a little bit. It may look like this is just stretching his leg, but these are a series of very specific stretches and traction exercises that I use to target the lower back. It takes a lot of maneuvering the limb to accomplish that goal, but we eventually get there. I switch over to his left side and repeat the same process. It takes a couple of minutes, but I finally feel him relax. He really needed that, and he seems to appreciate the work. He even yawned, which he pretty much never does, so that's a great sign that he's accepting the bodywork. That's a great place to stop for today. Lakota looks and feels much better already. My goal was to help him release some tense areas he's been holding on to, and as a result, improve his quality of life. I think I've accomplished that, but let's double check. I redo his movement test, and I can see that his neck is moving a bit freer now, as is his left foreleg. And that right hind leg is more willing to reach underneath of himself and carry his weight. This is looking great. Now I want to see him with the palpation test. He has greatly improved here too, and barely reacts at all as I run the tester on various muscle groups throughout his body. Now for the best part. I love to see how we did on the symmetry tests. Even though this test is a static one, if we don't have symmetry while he's standing still, we certainly won't have it during activity. So let's take a look. From the facial view, we can see that his TMJ and nostrils are almost perfectly aligned, and his nose is nice and straight. When we look at his chest, we can see that his shoulders are now symmetrical, and his sternum is all straightened out too. From behind, his pelvis is now realigned, and his tail is now falling straight down to the ground. Now I have to apologize for the top views, because both before and after I did a terrible job of getting the camera far enough to see him perfectly, but the pictures are good enough to see that his head and pelvis are now nearly straight, and while his left shoulder is still slightly rotated forward, it has improved over where we started. Thanks for watching today's bodywork session on Lakota, the Proud Paint. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing, leaving a like, and sharing with your friends. It really helps the channel out. If you suspect your horse has some discomfort that's preventing him from living his best life, I hope you consider contacting an equine bodyworker in your area. Stay safe, practice empathy, and have a great ride.